You're listening to the Hawgs Sports Network Daily Podcast. Now, here's your host, Matt Jones.
Hey, happy Tuesday to you. We appreciate you being with us. Chip Souza here with me in studio today. We'll talk some more about Arkansas, Tennessee, and just the significance of that victory for Arkansas last Saturday night over at Razorback Stadium. We're going to end our show today with a Q&A with Matt Zimmerman, former Razorback assistant basketball coach, also obviously works for the Razorback Foundation now, color analyst for the Razorback Sports Network basketball broadcast. We had him at our Hawgs Illustrated Sports Club last week, and I think you'll enjoy hearing our Q&A with him. Includes an hilarious story from him as he was recounting one of his recounting his high school coaching days. And so I hope you'll join us or stick with us toward the end.
You need to stick around for that.
To hear Matt's story about his lucky penny. As we said, though, we start today with Arkansas, Tennessee. Chip, how did Arkansas beating Tennessee the other night, does it change your perception at all about this team and maybe what its ceiling can be the rest of the year?
I don't know that it changes my perception because I think coming into the season, we knew Arkansas had a chance to be a pretty good team. What they didn't do too well in the losses that they had was handle adversity that well. On Saturday night, they handled adversity much better than they had in the two losses. Well, and I think what I was really most impressed with was the way that they moved past the A&M game quickly, or to use a Sam Pittman term, they flushed it quickly and moved on. And, to me, the tone of that game was set on Arkansas's opening possession. They took 10 minutes, almost 10 minutes off the clock, went down the field. They didn't get a touchdown, but they got 3 points out of it. And that kind of set the tone because Tennessee's MO coming into the game was to punch you in the mouth quickly. That's what they'd been doing all year long. But it was Arkansas that delivered that first punch, and Tennessee was the team that didn't handle adversity very well.
I thought that first drive by Arkansas just set the tone for the entire game.
No doubt. No doubt.
They only come away with a field goal, but there's something psychological, I would feel like, and maybe it put the Tennessee offense on ice too. You know, you're jacked up, you're ready to play, and then all of a sudden it's almost 10 minutes of game time. No telling how many minutes of real time it is before you can get on the field.
To me, it felt like that opening drive for Arkansas took 25 minutes or 30 minutes. I mean, I'm like, God, there's 5 minutes left in this first quarter, and it feels like we've been here an hour already.
Stat broadcast, the system that we use for in games. At halftime, it said Arkansas had the ball for 35 minutes of game time.
30-minute game.
I know it's a 30-minute game, but that's kind of what it felt like.
Yeah.
I mean, they totally owned Tennessee from a time of possession standpoint.
I didn't look at the stats to see what at the end of the game what the difference was in time of possession, and I understand that's kind of a stat that you're like, I don't know how meaningful it is. But in this game, I thought it was very important.
Why do you think Arkansas dominated in the way they did?
I think they were able to achieve a better balance offensively than they did against Texas A&M, and I said this on the podcast last week. I felt like Arkansas abandoned the run too much against Texas A&M. I know they weren't having a lot of success with it, but I don't think they had that balance that they had in other games this year. I think what they did is they went back and they said, okay, the thing we do best is we run the football, and we're not going to abandon it, and I think they had better balance.
Of course, at the end of the game, they don't have Jaquindon Jackson in the game. I don't know why. I know he's been dealing with, I think, an ankle injury not just the last week or so, but I think all year. They put Braylon Russell in.
Yeah.
And, I think I mentioned this yesterday on our podcast, but I have said previously that I think one of Arkansas's problems late in games this year is they just haven't had a closer.
Yeah.
I think they've got a closer now with the way the defense is playing. And Russell, with the way that he ran at the end of the game, that's something I think that needs to be analyzed and evaluated and obviously used more.
Well, I think Braylon had been used as more of a hammer in goal line situations. And I think he proved Saturday night that he can be a whole lot more than that. And he only carried the ball 8 times, but they were 8 very important carries. And I thought Rashad Dominion being there was also a benefit. He only had a couple of carries, but it felt like they were important carries.
Do you think Tennessee looks like a playoff team?
They didn't Saturday night. They didn't look like one. But, if they're not a playoff team, as Alabama won, and all the teams that got beat on Saturday, I don't know who it was who said this, but they were talking about kind of the parity in college football now that NIL has brought across the board. And it's allowing these kids like You take a kid at Alabama who is a third-string defensive tackle who might be a very, very. Let's go back to the Saban time. I don't know about now, but let's say he's a third-string defensive tackle at Alabama. Well, he could go to Missouri or somewhere else and have a big impact and be a starter. And I think you're seeing a lot more of that of these kids going, hey, it's all about reps, all about getting on the field. You got to get on the field in order to have an opportunity to play at the next level. And I think, that's what you're seeing. And these kids are going to different places where they're getting opportunities, and it's kind of spread the talent base out a little bit. And that's great. That's great for college football. Saturday, I don't think you could have scripted college football across the nation to be any better than it was on Saturday.
It seems like there's one of those games, or there's one of those days every year. When I was a kid, I think Reese Davis called it Shakedown Saturday.
Yeah.
It always came late in the year, or it seemed like it came late in the year, like maybe late October, maybe the second weekend of November or something, where the teams that were, still at that time in the BCS race, or I guess BCS race, that's what we use. Teams would just kind of get, it would be a separating of sorts. The teams, the pretenders and the contenders would get separated a little bit. And that's what it felt like on Saturday. And I wonder if we may have more of those type of days, like you said, with how just it seems like there's not just a whole lot of dominant teams, it feels like this year.
And what the transfer portal and NIL has done is it's thinned out the depth. So a team won't have 3 or 4 running backs. They can't just plug in like that, running backs or whatever. And so that levels the field a bit. You know what, man? It would not surprise me. It would not surprise me. It may not happen, but it would not surprise me if there's no undefeated teams left standing by the end of the regular season. It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, you could see Ohio State could lose a game. Obviously, they could lose a game. Texas could lose a game. I mean, with the 12-team playoff, you can afford to lose a game as long as it's not the wrong game.
A lot of people were thinking that the SEC is going to get 4, maybe even 5 teams into the playoff this year, and they still may.
They may.
But man, the last couple of weeks has certainly changed that talk. I think they'll probably still get multiple teams into the playoff, but I don't know that it's going to be the 4 or 5 teams that we thought. The conference to watch right now is the Big Ten.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got 3 of the top 4 teams in the country.
They do, and it's going to be interesting, and even though they're going to expand the playoffs to 12 and whatever, they're still going to be that 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 slot. Maybe even 6, 7, 8, 9, through 12 are going to be difficult decisions, and there's going to be some teams, that could be worthy of being in that top 12. They're not going to make it. It's fun. This is what it's all about. It's fun. So
I want to go back though to what we were talking about at the start, changing the perception of the season. I thought going into the Tennessee game, and I said this on our podcast last week, that I thought it was the least winnable game at home.
At the time, you were spot on. Correct.
Because, I just felt like Tennessee coming off a bye, Arkansas playing its 6th game in 6 weeks. I thought Tennessee was really good, along its defensive front. And based on what we had seen from Arkansas, I thought they were going to push Arkansas's offensive line around. They didn't do that. No. Arkansas held its own from an offensive line standpoint. But now you beat Tennessee, and to me, it's like it has totally changed the way I look at the rest of the season. I don't think Arkansas is going to win the rest of their games. I'm not saying that. But all of a sudden, I think they got a better chance against Texas.
Yes.
I think they got a better chance against Ole Miss.
Yes.
I've always thought that they had a decent chance to beat LSU. We'll see. There's 2 theories coming out of a bye week. One is that you are fresh and you're going to play well, and that's kind of been the case for Sam Pittman's teams. I mean, their record is really good when they've had more than a week to prepare for a team. On the other hand, you've got the theory that you're rusty, and that looked like that's what happened to Tennessee the other night, that they look like a team that hadn't played in a couple of weeks. And so it's going to be interesting when LSU comes in, because I think Arkansas's got the team that can play with LSU, but I wonder how the bye week affects them.
Tell you what, Matt, don't discount how big of a factor too the Arkansas crowd was Saturday night. Mm-hmm. It was I felt like it was a big factor. I'm here wearing Chiefs gear. I'm a big Chiefs fan. When teams go into Arrowhead Stadium, they know it's going to be a difficult place to play because of how loud the fans and how they're engaged on every play, not just game-ending drives or whatever, on every play. Mm-hmm. Arkansas, by that game being a late game Saturday against Tennessee, and they're getting the same thing against LSU.
6 o'clock on ESPN, even though Facebook doesn't want me to tell you that.
It's going to have the crowd a little bit more juiced up, so to speak, okay? That's a factor. It is a big factor, I think. And what did Pittman say? Tennessee had 4 false start penalties?
Yeah, I think they had 3. I think they had 4 pre-snap penalties.
So the crowd was a factor, and the crowd can be a factor. Arkansas hasn't always used its home field advantage. They haven't just been a dominant team at home. Maybe the crowd Saturday realized we can be a factor here against a Mississippi State or whoever. It doesn't have to be number 4 Tennessee or number whatever Texas. It can be a factor against anybody, and they can affect the outcome in some degree.
Facebook took a post down, by the way, whenever I said that Arkansas was going to host LSU on ESPN.
Did violate their community standards?
It's something like that. Big Brother was watching, and he took it down. I going back to the crowd for a minute. They were great.
Yeah.
I mean, you're sitting there in the moment, and I mean, there were times there at the end of the game where I've got a finger in my ear because I'm having trouble hearing whoever's talking next to me. And for Arkansas to turn the corner, I wrote this yesterday. They've got to win their home games. It's far too often they have not won their home games.
Correct.
When they beat Tennessee the other day, since expansion, I said it was kind of a full circle moment because, the 1999 Tennessee game, that's when they tore down the goalposts. They had already made the decision they were going to renovate Razorback Stadium, but that kind of validated it when they beat Tennessee the way they did in the last game on campus in 99. Since then, since they, expanded the stadium, the south end first and then the north end about 17 years later, their SEC record, including the game against Tennessee the other night, 31-42.
Not acceptable.
You can't be a good program when you don't win your home games.
No, and that goes back, that's 72 games, so it goes back, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years or so? How far back?
Well, since 01.
Okay, so
31-42, and I think against Power 5 teams or teams that were Power 5 at the time, so like Rutgers doesn't count because Rutgers – wasn't a Big Ten team when they came in here, but they did beat Arkansas.
Yeah.
But against Power 5 teams, I think they're 33-48 over that time.
That's just not acceptable. I mean, you have to be able to protect your turf and win at home. And you're right. If they want to be considered at least even just a middle of the pack SEC program, I'm not talking about top 2 or 3, just somewhere in that 5, 6, 7, and 8 range. They have to be much better at home. You go back to last year, they had gone on the road and won a big game at Florida. Went to overtime, won a big game. They needed it, had to have it. Got a big win there. They came back home to play Mississippi State and were as flat.
Well, they came back home to play Auburn.
But then they needed that.
They had to win
State.
3. They beat Mississippi State before they went to Florida, and they made the offensive coordinator change. But then they came back. To your point, they needed to win 3 games at home. They had 3 home games to get bowl eligible against Auburn, FIU, and Missouri,
and got curb stomped in 2 of those.
2 of them. Yeah, and they didn't look good against FIU either.
Yeah.
But some of that might be due just to that team and kind of maybe some some locker room issues and whatnot on that roster. But the point being, if you look around campus, what are the best programs? Baseball,
very highly attended.
Look at what they do at home.
Yeah,
I mean they
dominate
every year at home. It's
softball,
same thing.
Soccer, oh my God, they don't lose at home ever.
Yeah, no, they don't. Basketball. I mean, even I know that. It's been hit or miss with basketball, but over the last, even the Mike Anderson years, look at how good they were at home.
Yeah.
And so if you want to have a good program, if you even want to be, like Chip said, in the middle of the pack, you got to win your home games.
Yep.
And that was a good start against Tennessee, and it leads me to think that they could do it at least one more time, even though they're playing really good teams coming up the rest of the year.
Well, and also think of what Coach Pittman said after the game. They were happy but not surprised at what they did against Tennessee, and that's a good thing. You're like, maybe no one else expected us outside this locker room to be able to win this game, but inside this locker room, we always felt like we could win this game.
They're not a bad team.
No,
they're not a bad team. I think that the way that they collapsed at the end of the Oklahoma State game set a I don't know. It set a perception about them that I don't know that was reality. Texas A&M's a good team. Look at what Texas A&M did to Missouri.
Yeah.
That totally, to me, when I saw, and I know they had a different quarterback against Missouri, but that wasn't the reason they beat Missouri the way they did. I mean, their defense was just phenomenal in that game. The way that A&M beat Missouri on Saturday totally changes, and with Arkansas beating Tennessee, those two outcomes make me look back at the A&M game a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Or a lot differently, to be honest.
Still a game Arkansas could have won.
It doesn't feel like it was the Oklahoma State game, though. The Oklahoma State game, I felt like they gave that one away to Oklahoma State. To paraphrase Hugh Freeze, they'd win that one 9 out of 9 times.
Yeah.
A&M, I don't know that they would win that one every time they played. I think that one, maybe they win that one 3 or 4 times out of 10.
Well, they lost? It was 21-17, and the turnovers were just huge.
Turnovers were huge.
Yeah, huge.
So when we come back, we're going to take a look at our SEC efficiency ratings. It's kind of a fun little dive into the numbers that I do.
Matt's going to. I'm going to sit over here and just watch him.
Kind of a fun little number that I do that we look into offensive and defensive success, and I'll kind of break down why I think why it's something I believe in. We'll do that in just a moment, but first a word from our sponsors.
Want to enjoy your life again? Burning, numbness, and general pain in your feet and legs might be keeping you from your daily activities. Neuropathy treatment can be effective to restoring your life. Come see what we can do at Enhanced Healthcare Wellness Institute in Uptown Rogers. We can treat your neuropathy pain and get you back in the game of life. Enhanced Healthcare Wellness Institute is located at 5102 West Pauline Whitaker Parkway in Uptown Rogers.
At Kindle King, we're proud of over 4 decades of design. We're continuing the legacy of great creative design by combining our brands of Kindle King, Soapbox, and Shopcart. Together, these brands represent a new focus in marketing design, with individual attention to specific areas. Through our design expertise supported by a team of talented professionals, we showcase our best. We are Kindle King, we are Soapbox, we are Shopcart, we are design.
Hey, welcome back. We appreciate you being here. I want to tell you about our friends over at Enhanced Healthcare Wellness Institute. They are your source for holistic wellness and your healthy lifestyle changes. Located in Uptown Rogers, the staff at Enhanced Healthcare will target your specific health plan for wellness, from neuropathy treatment, primary care, weight loss, and so much more. You can count on the experts at Enhanced Healthcare Wellness Institute in Rogers. All right, today at WholeHogSports.com, I've got for the first time, this will be a weekly feature moving forward. It's the headline, Week 7 SEC Football Power Rankings, Efficiency Ratings, and Predictions.
Everything a football nerd would want to read about is there.
I would say so. So what we do, and I'll give credit where it's due, I got this idea from Barry Trammell, who's a columnist over in Oklahoma. He's with the Tulsa World now, formerly with the Oklahoman, very well known, and he's been there for a long time, an institution in Oklahoma media. And I was reading something from him a few years back, and he said, and basically it was Big 12 power ratings.
Yeah.
And I was really fascinated just to read it. And, he had all these different numbers. And what do these numbers mean? And I don't know how he came up with his numbers, but I think that we're kind of on the same track in terms of what he said he thinks is important. And I'd never really thought about it this way, Chip, but I think it's important too, is possessions and points.
Okay.
And it was yards, don't care.
Right.
Who cares about yards if you can't put it in the end zone?
Correct.
Possessions and points. How often do you score, and how many points do you score relative to the number of opportunities that you have to score those points? And so that's where this comes from. And I think I may have said this on the podcast recently, but it's kind of like in baseball. At some point in time, my thought on batting average changed, and I became a much more, I started believing a lot more in OPS than in batting average. And this is kind of a different way to look at offense. So instead of looking at total offense or scoring offense, which can be skewed, by the way, because scoring offense includes
defensive touchdowns,
safeties, defensive touchdowns, special teams touchdowns. This is more of an in-depth look at how often does an offense score relative to the number of chances that it has, and the same thing for defense. How often does the defense keep the other team from scoring relative to the opportunities?
Right. So breaking that down, and I saw your work, Matt, and so the end result, when you compared the offensive efficiency to the defensive efficiency, and you came up with the power ratings power rankings from the top to the bottom, it pretty much lines up with everything else. Good teams have good ratings. The not so good teams have lower ratings. I mean, it's it's there in the numbers. The data is there.
From a Razorback standpoint, one thing that does stand out to me is that Arkansas is number 8 in the SEC, ahead of Oklahoma, who's ranked, ahead of Missouri, who's ranked. And what these are based off of is they're based off of all games against Power 4 teams. I mentioned this yesterday. We had SEC-only efficiency ratings, and I didn't really want to do anything with those because, like, Texas has only played one SEC game.
Yeah.
LSU's only played one SEC game. And
this will be better 3 or 4 weeks from now.
Exactly.
You get a better idea.
Exactly. As the season goes along, you get a better idea. But Arkansas number 8, that's not a bad place to be.
I mean, that's where I think they are. They're somewhere in that 6 to 8 range is what I think. And that would be a great season. And if a break or two goes your way, you might be in that 4 range.
Mm-hmm.
If you get a break here, if you're in that 4 range, you might be a college football playoff team.
Arkansas 8th defensively in the SEC right now as I pull these numbers up. Basically, Chip, the way I come up with that is that they have allowed 81 points on defense.
Okay.
I think they've allowed 88 points total in games against Power 4 teams. But remember, Oklahoma State had a pick 6.
Yeah, they did. Yep.
And so they've allowed 81 points on, I don't know how many drives this is, but basically about 343 points possible. That's a really good number. And one thing that stands out to me is that I don't know if it's bad offense is being played or elite defense is being played in the SEC this year, but there are a lot of teams with, at least through 6 weeks, really strong defensive scores. You got Ole Miss is number 1, which I think was really surprising.
Yeah, but they have improved defensively this year. They made a concerted effort in the offseason to go into the portal and get better defensive players, so they have improved.
Ole Miss has gotten 2 of the best defensive outings this year against South Carolina. Held them to a field goal against Wake Forest. Held them to 2 field goals. Tennessee's up there. Some of the usual suspects. We know OU defensively is really good. Kentucky's really good defensively. We saw A&M the last couple of weeks. That they're pretty good. Georgia's up there. These are the teams that are right there with Arkansas. So that's not bad company to have from a defensive standpoint.
No, and the Arkansas defense has performed well. The only game I felt like they didn't perform that well in was the second half, the Oklahoma State game. First half was phenomenal, but they had focused their attention on Ollie Gordon, as they should have coming in. I mean, he was going to be the difference. Who knew their quarterback was going to have such a sensational second half? I didn't see that coming. But kudos to them, they did. But to me, that was the only kind of a, not great performance that they've had through the first 6 games. It was the second half of that game.
Did you hear Brandon Marcello's interview with us yesterday?
A little bit of it.
Go back and listen to this if you haven't, to our podcast yesterday. He talked to Travis Williams over the weekend about one of the changes that he made, and basically he said that he had seen some stuff from Oklahoma that they had done with 3 down linemen.
Yeah.
And said that they basically put in 4 plays at the beginning of the week. It's almost like the defensive veer. It's like we're only going to run this small playbook, but we're going to run them well. And they gave Tennessee a lot of problems with that change.
Well, I think they went with looks like a 3, 4, 5 or 6 or something like whatever on the back
3-2-6.
Yeah, 3-2-6, and I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name. Nico 8 is what I call him.
Yeah, Maliava.
It seemed to really confuse him and confuse the receivers. Tennessee's only real success they had in the passing game was the short passes they were throwing out to Brew McCoy and those guys. Nothing else that they seemed to do. I didn't feel like there was any chunk plays in the passing game.
Well, he had 156 yards and 42 of them came on that play right
the third
before
from
the very end.
Yeah, third from the last play there or whatever. And that was just an incredible catch on that play as well.
Tennessee, defensively, they're really good. And this is what we're finding with a lot of teams is that they're really good on one side of the ball, but they're not good on the other.
Yeah.
So like Tennessee's defense, they're ranked number 2, but on offense, they're number 10. Flip side, Alabama, number 2 on offense. But on defense, Alabama is number 12.
And
if you go SEC only, Alabama's number 15.
That is just not Alabama football. And I'm sure that is what Caleb DeBoer is getting most of the flack on this week is giving up 40 to Vanderbilt. That is un-Alabama-like.
Vanderbilt's got a better offense this year. Diego Pavia.
Pavia, yeah.
Am I saying that right?
I think so. I know he's
Diego. Well,
he is a linebacker playing quarterback. I know that.
I'll use the Chip method.
Yeah.
I'll use his first name.
Yeah. Diego too.
Yeah, Diego, Vanderbilt's quarterback. They've had good success. We saw him move the ball against Virginia Tech. We saw him move the ball even against Missouri. Even though Missouri's defense is right down there with Alabama, one of the worst ones in the league right now. So I don't know that surprised me so much. Here's my thought on Alabama, is that I think their attention to detail on defense, there's no doubt in my mind that it has suffered.
Yeah.
I remember when Arkansas fired Bobby Petrino as the head coach. And I can remember being out at preseason practice in 2012 and just the total different vibe that I got at those practices. I didn't feel like the attention to detail was anywhere near what it had been in the spring when he was the coach for the first part of the spring before he got fired. And, obviously it was just a much looser, there was I don't know if I would call it I don't know if I want to go like culture of fear, but the players feared Petrino.
Yeah.
Or maybe they respected him. And
Combination of both.
Maybe that's the best point. And I just didn't feel that in 2012. And I think there's probably, and this isn't to say that DeBoer and his coaching staff are bad coaches, but I think from a defensive standpoint, it has just there's a lack of attention to detail on defense. And that may not be anything against the defensive coaches who have come there. It's just a matter of look at who they're replacing. This is one of the best that's ever done it from a defensive end.
Well, and again, DeBoer coming in, he's a good coach. He's a good coach at Washington. He is a good coach, but he is not Nick Saban. And if you did not think there was going to be some drop-off at Alabama, you are living in a dream world. There's going to be some drop-off because you don't just lose a guy of Nick Saban's stature and replace him. It's not a plug-and-play thing.
It's a different way that they're going to have to win games.
Yeah.
And I know they've become a lot more offensive in, say the last 10 years when they've had Kiffin and Sarkisian and Bill O'Brien and some of those coaches in there. But at the core of Alabama has still always been having a strong defense.
Yep.
And I feel like the new Alabama, at least this year, the way Alabama's going to have to win this year is they're going to have to win some shootouts.
And I
think they can because I think their offense is really good.
Well, and it is, but that is a scary way to win games because your offense can miss a few opportunities, and all of a sudden you're playing from behind. And look at what happened to Tennessee Saturday night. I mean, they played from behind the whole game, and that's a hard thing to do on the road.
Texas is the number one team in our SEC power rankings. You can read the whole list right now at wholehogsports.com. It's the top story on our website today. Again, Week 7 SEC football power rankings, efficiency ratings, and predictions. On the prediction front, just for fun, we'll go through some of these because these are not necessarily the teams that I think will win. It's just what the numbers tell us. This is totally subjective. This is based totally on data. It's got Alabama by 8 this week, and it's always going to give you a little bit more conservative score, I think. It's certainly not going to give you these 21-point betting lines like what you've got in Alabama hosting South Carolina. It likes Alabama to win. It likes Texas to win by 12 over OU. It likes Georgia to win by 12 over Mississippi State. That's a 32-point spread, by the way, because Mississippi State is terrible. That's what the ratings tell us.
Yeah.
It likes Tennessee over Florida. It likes Ole Miss at LSU. And then where it really the one place that it differs from Vegas right now in terms of the winner is that I was really surprised to see Kentucky's a 14-point favorite to beat Vanderbilt. It's in Lexington, but I think that with Kentucky's offense, expecting them to beat anybody by 14 is a little bit of a stretch right now. Maybe they do. Maybe they get some defensive scores, but our model likes Vanderbilt by a point.
I guess they think that Vanderbilt's going to be still riding that emotional high over the win against Alabama.
Possibly.
I don't know that it's going to be a touchdown difference.
I was really surprised whenever I pulled up the game spreads for this week and it had Kentucky by 14.
Yeah, but the odds makers in Vegas, they are get it right more times than not. By their winning their percentage is really good.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. We'll see. I think Vanderbilt is going to have to deal with that the emotion of knocking off the number one ranked team. They'll have to go back to a Pittman thing. They got to flush it and move on in a good way.
Who do you think the best SEC team is right now?
Man, I don't know. I've not seen all the teams play. The thing is, I don't know how good Texas is. They have not really played anybody. They have done okay. I think they're playing their third, maybe their second or third running back. They've had several running backs that have gone out, and so I don't know how good they are. I just don't.
Their quarterback play has been good, regardless of who's played.
Yeah, it has. But again, you go back to who have they played? They just haven't played anybody. So I don't want to say they're overrated, but I don't know if they're as good as – I don't know if they're the number one team in the country.
I don't think that Michigan is a good team this year.
They can't throw the ball.
And, a lot of people – I was kind of like this, and I'm like everybody else. You kind of go up and down based on, they did this week. So they played Texas, and they lost real bad. And then they only beat Arkansas State by 10. I'm like, okay, I'm out on Michigan.
Yep.
But then they come back and they beat Southern Cal.
Beat USC.
But now Southern Cal, they don't
lose to Minnesota.
I'm down on Michigan right now.
To me, what I have seen with my eyes is Ohio State is the best team.
They'll get a chance to prove it. They go to Oregon,
Yeah.
and that is a really tough place to play. It's kind of like War Memorial. I think they've only got about 55,000, but when it's full, it gets loud, and it's as intimidating, I think, as any stadium in the country. So, in my opinion, I'm kind of with you about Texas. I think the numbers say that Texas is really good, but I'm not sure who they played because Mississippi State and Michigan are the only power teams that they played.
Right.
We'll learn a little bit more about them this week at the Red River game, even though I'm not, I don't think OU's very good this year either. I think whoever wins Ohio State, Oregon would be the team that I think is the best team in the country right now.
Yeah, I have not followed Oregon much this year. I'll watch the game Saturday to see what kind of quarterback Dylan Gabriel has been for them. He was at Oklahoma last year and transferred to Oregon. And also Evan Stewart, that was at Texas A&M, was A&M's top receiver last year, I thought, is also there with him. So we'll see. But in my eyes and what I've seen, to me, Ohio State is the best team in the country.
Two good games to gauge who some of the best teams are. That game this weekend, the following week, Georgia goes to Austin to play Texas. That'll be a good. That'll be the gauge where we really know, hey, how good is Texas? How ready are they for the elite of the elite SEC
And
teams?
how beat up will Texas be after this Oklahoma game? Because I don't know if you've ever been to one of those Red River games.
I want to go.
It is. Those teams stand in the middle of the field and they go toe to toe and they are swinging haymakers. And I know we've talked about the Arkansas games at Little Rock or whatever. The Texas OU game, I don't think will ever leave Fair Park in Dallas. It's never going to leave. I don't think.
Florida, Georgia, I think is on a little bit of thin ice in Jacksonville. I'm with you. The Cotton Bowl has, they've expanded that stadium since the bowl game left there.
It's still a dump, but whatever.
But it's all been in an effort to keep Texas OU as part of the state fair.
Well, and that just attracts so many people to the fair, and that's what it's all about in Dallas for the month of October is the State Fair of Texas. That is massive. And God, I wish I could go get a Fletcher's corn dog because those are fantastic, and a fried Snickers.
You know who Texas plays after Georgia? Vanderbilt.
Yeah. Oh,
could they do what Bama did, beat Georgia and then lose to Vanderbilt?
Now Vandy fans were saying last week, we want Texas. So, yeah, maybe they'll get them.
Is that in Nashville or is that in Austin?
I think it's in Nashville.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's at Vanderbilt.
Hopefully they'll have their goalposts back. Did you see where they fished those out of the Cumberland River?
They did.
Yeah, the Nashville Fire Department actually went in and pulled it out of the river. And I think I read this, that they're going to saw off parts of the goalposts and sell them as like a fundraiser for NIL.
Wow, that's a brilliant idea. Now, I was most impressed that they took the entire goalpost out of the stadium, right? They didn't break it up until, whatever.
Well, it's hard to break and they've got one of those old school goalposts. It's not a collapsible goalpost like they've got at Fayetteville. Like you saw when Arkansas rushed the field the other night, the strategy, I guess, for the event management people was to get circled around the goalpost,
the base,
and get it down where people couldn't tear it down. They've got because Vanderbilt's never won, and so they've never had their fans rush the
it wasn't
field
a problem.
like this.
Yeah,
and so they had the old school goalposts that they took down. It's hard to break those once
the ag shop at Vanderbilt welded it all together. And
we were talking about Hawgs Plus, the documentary on the Tennessee game the other day. They were interviewing somebody who had one of the bases of the goalpost, and he said that they bought a hacksaw, and they basically broke the hacksaw trying to get just a little sliver of the goalpost, cut off to give to friends. And so those things are hard to dismantle.
Yeah. Well, nowadays you have those angle cutters and whatever, they could probably cut through it pretty quickly. But if you're hacksawing through a goalpost, that's a lot of this. You better have 3 or 4 people. Okay, it's your turn.
Or 3 or 4 hacksaws.
Yeah, it's your turn. Go ahead.
All right. Well, hey, when we come back, we'll replay our Q&A with Matt Zimmerman from the Hawgs Illustrated Sports Club last week. I think you'll enjoy hearing that.
You want to stay here for this, yeah.
By the way, if you want to know more about the Hawgs Illustrated Sports Club, go to ozarkstix.com, OZARKSTIX.com. Our next sports club luncheon will be next Thursday, October 17th, with Kyle May, who is the executive director of Arkansas Edge. It'll be interesting to talk to him about Edge and about the Slobber Hog, and just NIL's been, as it always is, a big part of the conversation this fall. That's going to be in Springdale at the Home 2 Suites at noon next Thursday, October 17th. We'll be back with our Q&A with Matt Zimmerman in just a moment, but first a word from our sponsors.
Want to enjoy your life again? Burning, numbness, and general pain in your feet and legs might be keeping you from your daily activities. Neuropathy treatment can be effective to restoring your life. Come see what we can do at Enhanced Healthcare Wellness Institute in Uptown Rogers. We can treat your neuropathy pain and get you back in the game of life. Enhanced Healthcare Wellness Institute is located at 5102 West Pauline Whitaker Parkway in Uptown Rogers.
At Kindle King, we're proud of over 4 decades of design. We're continuing the legacy of great creative design by combining our brands of Kindle King, Soapbox, and Shopcart. Together, these brands represent a new focus in marketing design, with individual attention to specific areas. Through our design expertise supported by a team of talented professionals, we showcase our best. We are Kindle King, we are Soapbox, we are Shopcart, we are design.
Hey, welcome back. We want to tell you about our friends over at Bentonville Glass. They've been serving their community since 1971. They're committed, professional, and versatile. If you're looking for a quality leader in Northwest Arkansas or looking for skilled craftsmanship, look no further than Bentonville Glass for all your glass market needs with the highest quality products. You can come by and see them today at 507 South Main in Bentonville or online at bentonvilleglass.com. Last week, Matt Zimmerman was our guest at the Hawgs Illustrated Sports Club. We're going to play a little bit of the Q&A that we had with him now, if for no other reason than for you to hear this humorous story about the day that he found a lucky penny during a 4 AAA district tournament in Mansfield. This is fun stuff. Matt also talks about a little bit about his time coaching for Mike Anderson, what didn't go correctly for that staff. So it was an interesting talk with Matt at the Hawgs Illustrated Sports Club, and here it is now.
I went to Waldron High School, and there was this guy always hollering on the sideline for Dardanelle. Yeah. That's what I remember about being in high school. Is this guy just going nuts on the sideline. And then, 12 years later, I meet him, and now we work around each other all the time.
How about it?
And how many of you actually believe that penny story? Because it's true.
Can I tell the penny story real quick?
Can you tell them about Paris High School?
Yeah, I'll tell it real quick. All right, so I don't know what year it was. I was coaching high school basketball at Dardanelle. Maybe 1999, I think, or 98. So Mansfield had never been in our league. Dardanelle was in a conference with Clarksville, Ozark, Subiaco, Morrilton.
Boonville.
Yeah, Boonville, all them. Boonville was so Boonville High School had this great football. They weren't any good in basketball. So we go to Boonville High School, watch a football game one Friday night. I'm standing on the sideline. I was a get-back coach for the head football coach. And I'm standing on the side there getting in the way. And they were beating us 42-0 in the second quarter. We had a pretty good team. They were killing us. And I turned to our athletic director, Larry Walker. I said, Coach, and they ran this little, where there was 3 guys in the backfield, Coach, kind of a little wing tee type deal. And they were all packed in there. All 3 backs were packed in there. Boonville High School, football power back then. And still are, I guess. And I said, it's raining, and they're just running, just killing us. And I said, Coach, I can't even hardly keep up with the football. And he said, Coach, just look for the guy that's running all by himself, nobody else around him. And I said, oh, yeah, you're right. That's what it was. I'm in Mansfield Gym. I'm the basketball coach at Dardanelle. And we had Paris High School was in our conference. That was a good football school back then. They won a state championship in the 90s in high school football, the Paris Eagles. And so back then, I would drive the bus sometimes, just kind of energy. So I drive, we go over there, and we'd beaten Paris 2 times. I still got my CDL if you need it. And I promise, it was hard to get that thing, so I don't want to give it up. It was very hard. I got a CDL. I still pay for the CDL. And Coach, I came from St. Vincent, Arkansas. And so I'm sitting there in the Mansfield. I'm worried sick about playing Paris. And we'd beaten them by like 1 and by like 2. And they had these great football players that played basketball. They were 6'3", 6'4", 6'5". One of them's name was Austin McKnight. He ended up coaching at Danville for a long nowhere else. But he was a really good basketball player too. And we beat them in 2 close games. We're in the district tournament. We got to win this game to go to regionals. And in small school, Darnell wasn't that small, but in Class 3A time, you have district, regional, state. And so we got to win this game or the season's over, and I got a really good team. And but we're playing this game to win and advance, and I was so worried about Paris. And I was praying and doing all kinds of stuff. And we get to the gym, Coach Dunn, and it's one of them old school gyms at Mansfield. I don't even know how they're hosting the district tournament in this little gym. We walk in there, and we shared a bathroom with Mansfield's team. With Paris's team in the Mansfield gym. So my kids are, it's urinal, commode with no fencing around it. So like if you had to really go to that commode, everybody was going to see you. So I walked in there, and my players are there, and young guys, they only pee like once every 2 days, but we've been on the bus for like 2 hours, so they're peeing. And I get over here, and I look down in this pot, and there's this beautiful shiny penny face up. And I looked down there, and I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. Not going to do that. So I pee, and this gym's probably at that time, they have a new gym now. This is probably a 60-year-old gym. They'd cleaned that pot for the district tournament. And that's probably the first time it had been cleaned in 6 or 7 years. So I flushed the commode. I said, this thing's going to go up into the deal. So I hit the commode, and it settles right back down. So I was like, okay. The door opens, and it's Darren Staller, and he is the coach at Paris. I'm like, hey, Coach, how you doing? And, hey, Coach, man, I'm so worried about this game. You guys beat us. I'm so worried. Y'all are so good. Y'all are going to beat us. That's coach talk. You just talk, I'm so worried. We sit there in small talk. He stands there to pee. And he said, oh, there's a penny in here. I should reach in here and get it. I said, oh, there is? And he said, yeah, but he goes, I'm kind of superstitious. And I said, no, I'm not I was very superstitious. I was like, I said what I always say. I'm not really superstitious. I'm just stitious. But he pees. I go wash my hands. I probably wouldn't have washed my hands if he hadn't been in there. But I wash my hands, and I dry my hands, and I'm walking back. And I said, all right, Coach. And he's talking to me. And so we bid farewell. See you on the court. So I open the door back, and he's gone. So I walk over there. And back when I coached high school, I wear slacks, a pair of dress shoes, the old hard sole shoes, and usually a white button-down shirt with a tie. No sport coat. And so I roll up the sleeve of my white, probably Stafford shirt, and I roll that thing up. Bloop. I get that penny. That door opens. I look. It's Coach Staller. He's coming back. And he said, I was coming back to get that penny. I said, I got it, Coach. And I put that penny in my pocket. The buzzer sounds, Coach, the buzzer sounds, we're down 1 point. But I had a big kid that was going to play football at Arkansas Tech named Matt Murdoch. He was our postman. About 6'5". And Matt, I'd called such a bad play, down 1. Matt never played outside the paint. He had to run all the way out past the three-point line, and the clock's going 5, 4. I've got no more timeouts. The basket's back here. Matt's pivoting around with I don't know how he even got the ball out there. Finally, one of my little guards, Casey Melder, he's now a state trooper. Casey came in, his brother's a state trooper, Chase, who also played for me. Casey came and grabbed that ball from Matt Murdoch and dribbled hard to the baseline. And that kid I told you about, Austin McKnight, the best player at Paris, he come flying out there, left his man because he knew we didn't have time to pass. Casey flipped that ball up, that buzzer sounded, and that ball went in over Austin McKnight. And we won the next game on a buzzer shot against Clarksville, who I did not like, and the championship game against Ozark. No offense, fine people in Ozark. Didn't like them either. And we had a half-court shot to beat them. And so it all came from that penny. How about that? Do you think Coach Cal would stick his hand in a pot and get that penny? That's a true story.
That's the first story Matt Zimmerman ever told me, by the way. Imagine that for first impression. That gym at Mansfield was terrible. We went there and played 1 year, and it was one of those jamboree tournaments. And so we had to sit there for a long time. And I remember all of us got up and our shorts were ripped because they had splintered wood seats in that gym. And yeah, it was pretty rough.
Yeah, Bill Fry.
Okay.
That's absolutely right.
They built a new one, but the old one's what I remember. First time I ever interviewed you was September of 2011. And you know what he tells me? He goes, Missouri's about to go to the SEC. I said, okay. Yeah. Next day, it's announced Missouri to the SEC. I could have broke the biggest story.
Every once in a while, I have a nugget.
You had a good one that time. gosh, I don't even know what to ask you about. When you went into broadcasting, you and I were talking, and you were like, coaching's been my whole life.
Yeah.
And you said, I don't know what this next phase of my life looks like. Maybe I turn into a career broadcaster, maybe I don't. You didn't know what was next for you. It's turned out pretty well for you. I mean, you just won Sportscaster of the Year in Arkansas. You've got a podcast going that I think people listen to. You're on the radio. You're doing the stuff with Chuck on the football broadcast. I mean, it's been good to you.
Yeah, it really has. And so I got let go in 2019 from the basketball staff, and the jobs I was offered in basketball were all, there were some good Division I schools, but it wasn't nothing like Arkansas, where I'm from, and it wasn't any SEC schools. So it was great places like my friend Mike Morrell at UNC Asheville and at different places like that. And those would have been great. But I was a little bit older than I'd been when I'd moved all over the country chasing it. And my dad and mom were very important to me, and were getting older. And so I really thought about them a lot in 2019. So we'd got let go. There was no jobs for me at the school. And I basically just had to decide, I'm going to be all in or all out. And if I'm going to be all in, I got to figure out what I'm going to do to pay the bills. And so I remember when I called Hunter, and he was very nice about it. I said, I'm going to stay. And he said, I appreciate that, but we don't have anything for you. What are you going to do? I said, I don't know. I'm going to figure it out. And so it just worked out for me in a lot of different ways. I remember even talking to Lindy and John David about going to work for them. I would have been the worst person, probably the worst employee you ever had at Lindsay and Associates. But I was just trying to figure out how I can stay, but still wanted to be in athletics and in college athletics. And then was offered some I was a high school coach. I loved high school and was offered some very good high school jobs. All the first 3 years I was out. Jobs I would have begged to had when I was at Dardanelle or Plainview or any of those schools. But I was starting to build something with a different career, and it's been good. And then just about 6 months after we got let go, I was able to convince the Razorback Foundation, and I started working for Miss Billy Vitito and Scott Verity and that crew, and that helped me as well. But I love doing sports casting. I love talking about the Razorbacks, and it's lucky I'm not in a neutral role, so I don't have to give a neutral opinion. If you want to know the ins and outs I do have some stuff about when we lose a football or basketball game, but I can't be just Christina Long and to say it exactly. I gotta put a little lovey-dovey on it to keep the coaches happy and to keep me employed.
Talk about your role at the Razorback Foundation, what you do there, and explain to people the difference between the foundation and the collective and how you kind of complement one another. I mean, you both have the same objective. You're wanting to help the Razorback athletes, but it's
definitely
very
separate.
different work.
Yeah, different world. The Razorback Foundation's a fundraising arm for the Razorbacks, and there's years that we'll have to produce anywhere from 22 million to, if we're doing a building project, maybe 40, 45, 50 million that goes from our foundation to the athletic department. And Coach Broyles and Wilson Matthews kind of separated with a couple of very smart attorneys, kind of got the foundation separated from the athletic department. And there was different reasons for that. But mainly it did provide some separation in the foundation. We do everything from pay scholarships to operating costs to everything that's involved with Razorback athletes and Razorback teams. And the teams aren't going to be able to make it without the foundation. Now, the foundation is only there because of our players and our student athletes. Name, image, and likeness is now in its 4th year, and people all have their opinions about it. It's fine. It's good that the players are getting paid. To me, they deserve a piece of it. It's just been such a hard adjustment for so many people that aren't used to that. You got to realize, when I was coaching, we weren't allowed to give a kid an extra meal. We weren't allowed to, when we had bagels in the locker room, when they finally allowed us to have bagels in the locker room after morning workouts, we couldn't provide the cream cheese or any jellies or anything because it was a supplement. And there were so many rules, and our rule book from the NCAA at that time was huge. And I'm not an NCAA hater. I'm not at all. You got to have rules. But we went from that to just everything. And the NCAA has finally said, we were trying to make sure everyone from Arkansas to UAPB and everyone in between gave their student athletes the exact same. Gave them the same kind of housing, gave them the same amount of food. We're not going to do that anymore. If you want to buy them 49 meals today, you can buy them 49 meals because the NCAA finally figured out who's paying for it. The NCAA, No, the schools are. And so it's the same way with the number of coaches. They always wanted to limit how many coaches. Now the NCAA is like, we don't care how many coaches you have because you're paying for them. If you want to have 40, and now we just did it with the scholarships. All those years of 11.7 baseball scholarships, it wasn't because of Arkansas, it was because of the other 340 Division I baseball programs that were losing money every year. So that all these ADs and presidents, they want to just keep sinking more and more money into some of the non-revenues. Arkansas, it's a revenue sport. But now you can go to 34 scholarships. They don't care. The NCAA's like, you can have 34. You can do whatever you want because you're the one that's paying for the scholarship, not the NCAA. So the NIL is very important. Are we doing pretty well? We're doing pretty well. Are we the best in the country? Probably not. Basketball, we're pretty good. Baseball, probably doing pretty good. But we're not ever going to have a coach come up here and talk to you with Hawgs Sports and say, you know what, Coach, we're good. We don't need any more money. Are they, Miss Billy? They're just not going to say that's not how coaches are. They're always competitive. They're always worried about what's Gravette doing, what's Bentonville West doing, what's Bentonville High School doing, what's Fayetteville. So you're just constantly needing more, constantly. And that's what NIL has become, and it's with really no rules. It's hard. Coach Pittman talks about it all the time. A guy can come in, whether it's a current guy on our team or it's a guy he's recruiting, and he can say, hey, South Carolina has offered me $500,000. You're giving me $250,000. Hopefully he's telling the truth, but there's no way to prove any of that stuff. And you got to decide how bad you want this guy. And then you got to decide, can we come up with this money? There's a lot of student. I'll tell you, there are people who complain about NIL, but there are no student athletes are because they're doing pretty well in it.
You coaches, you analyze everything. So I want to ask you about the 9 years that you spent here as an assistant and a director of basketball operations. I always tell people that I thought Mike Anderson's coaching tenure, it laid the foundation for somebody to come along and do something really great. He left the program in a better shape than he found it. If you look back on it, why was it that you guys just weren't able to get enough tournament wins and it didn't work out? Because when he came here, people thought he'd be here for the rest of his life.
We had really good players. We needed another piece or two sometimes. And we had, in his stretch here, over that amount of years, he had the third most wins in the league. Kentucky, Coach Cal, and then Florida, then us. But at Arkansas, you can't keep getting beat in the first round or the second round and not make a deeper run. When you look at his numbers and that staff's numbers, it's as good or better than Muss's in the regular season. But Muss went to an Elite Eight, and a Sweet 16. And that's incredible. That's awesome. That's great work. And that's what you got to do at Arkansas. We went, when we got beat in the second round by North Carolina a couple times, and then boom, you go to the NIT, you're in trouble. Even with Coach Richardson, the great teams he had. From 1989, he got fired here. 1989 to 1996, we're hoping that's what this is about to be with Coach Cal. You're talking about conference champion, conference tournament champ, get beat in the second round tournament. 90, conference champ, conference tournament champ, Final Four. 91, conference champ, conference tournament champ, Final Eight. 92, conference champ, didn't win the conference tournament, got beat in the Sweet 16. Got beat in the second round by Memphis. 1993, win the conference. Don't win the conference tournament. Get beat in the Sweet 16. No, didn't win the conference in 93. 94, won the conference. Didn't win the conference tournament. National champion. 95, win the conference. Don't win the conference tournament. National runner-up. 96, didn't win the conference. Didn't win the conference tournament. Went to the Sweet 16. 1989 and 1996, that's incredible. That's an incredible run. We didn't do that. And you got to make runs. You can't get beat in the first and second round. Same way for Coach Cal. He can have a great year and get beat in the first round. It's going to be fine. We're going to be fine. But if he gets beat in the second round next year, okay, that's fine. He gets beat. And that's just how it is. This is Arkansas. It's expected.
Got a lot more I could talk to you about. We're about out of time. I will ask you, the story of the day is the slobber hog. Is it true that you put up the $500,000 matching? Well,
since I work basically for free for Billy Vizito, I did not put that money up. By the way, Billy's the nicest person there is, and in our podcast, I call her the villain.
Oh.
So I point everything towards Billy money-wise with Arkansas Razorbacks.
Is it a curse that they don't have the slobber hog? Because people think that is.
But if you win the national championship, and you had it when you won the national championship, it's incredible. I would love to see it back.
It's coming back.
Yeah, it's definitely coming back. Well, yeah. And so it's
even
really
if they don't
nice.
raise the $500,000, it's coming back. That's my opinion.
I would think there's a really good chance.
I think so.
Just how Hunter markets things and how he does it. So it's going to be nice to have that back, but you still got to have a great team. You still got to win basketball games.
Matt, appreciate your time. Thank
All
you
right,
for coming
thank
up
you
here.
so much. Thank you.
Hey, we appreciate you being with us today. Hope you enjoyed that conversation with Matt Zimmerman. For more from what he had to say at the Hawgs Illustrated Sports Club, you can go to our Whole Hog Sports YouTube page, and you can find his comments there in Springdale. We'll be back with another podcast on Wednesday with Christina Long joining me to talk more about Razorback football in this off week. Until then, hope we'll see you at our website, wholehogsports.com. Have a great day, everyone.